My own father looked me in the eye and brutally crushed my dreams, refusing to pay for my tuition, all to protect his golden child. But what he didn't realize was that one day, I'd get my sweet, poetic revenge. I was 32, my younger brother 28, and our dad, now 56, raised us since middle school. From the earliest days, Dad made it abundantly clear who his favorite was. My brother was the rough and tumble, sports-loving, macho son he'd always wanted. Me, I was the opposite. I loved reading, singing, and most of all, the kitchen. I was a mama's boy through and through, finding comfort and joy in what many called feminine interests. My father tried to force me into football, but I was useless, and with every failed attempt, the chasm between us grew wider. He'd gush about my brother's latest achievement, but I was invisible, unheard. My mother, bless her soul, was the only beacon of fairness. She loved us both equally, and that's why I gravitated towards her, cherishing every moment. I tried to bridge the gap with Dad to connect, but his disinterest was palpable. He simply didn't care to fix what was broken. Then a devastating blow. My mother, the glue that barely held our fractured family together, passed away from cancer when I was in 8th grade. It was sudden, brutal, and left me completely shattered. I spiraled, lost in a grief that felt too big for my young shoulders. My only refuge, my only solace, became the kitchen. I cooked obsessively, pouring all my heartbreak and longing into every dish. My mother had been an incredible cook. She always said if she hadn't taken over her father's business, she would have been a chef. So, in the warmth of the kitchen, I felt closest to her. But my father and brother, they just shut down. They suppressed their own grief, and instead of drawing closer, they pushed me further away. While other families found comfort in shared loss, we only grew colder. My cooking, a lifeline for me, infuriated my dad. He'd constantly bark at me to get out of the damn kitchen and do something manly. One day his anger boiled over. He threatened me with all the household chores if he caught me cooking again, demanding I man up, like my brother. That night, a raw, brutal fight erupted. I screamed that he'd never loved me. His reply? A chilling, I guess not. It was out in the open, undeniable. After that, I stopped trying. He stopped caring. For years I retreated. My room became my sanctuary, music, recipe books, endless hours devoted to mastering my craft. I was determined to make this chef dream a reality, not just for myself but for my mother's memory. Dad and I spoke only when absolutely necessary. My brother, following Dad's lead, ignored me. After Mom, I was utterly alone. Then came college applications. I aimed high, applying to several top culinary schools, including one in France and a few regular universities as a backup. I'd secretly interned that summer, gained experience, and secured a glowing recommendation letter. The hard work paid off. I got into several schools, including the best culinary academy in France. I was ecstatic, vibrating with a mixture of thrill and terror. This was it. This was my dream. But it meant facing Dad. I steeled myself, prepared to beg, to plead, to do anything to make this happen. Giving up wasn't an option. I finally told him, bracing for his typical dismissal, a lecture about masculine professions. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for his flat-out refusal to pay my tuition. My father wasn't poor. In fact, he was incredibly well off, easily able to afford my dream school in France. Money wasn't the issue. The real reason? He feared my success would make my younger brother feel insecure. My brother, the golden child, was struggling with grades, unable to focus, and Dad didn't want me competing with him. He told me to go to community college or pay for it myself. I was stunned, speechless. How could a father be so cruel, so heartless? I tried to explain how much this meant, how desperately I needed it, but he was immovable, absolutely unwilling to budge. He looked me straight in the eye and declared my brother's well-being his topmost priority. I couldn't comprehend it. What kind of parent crushes their child's dreams for the sake of a favorite? After hours of pleading and sobbing, when he still refused, something in me snapped. We had a horrific fight. I said things I can't even remember, then I walked out of that house for good. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. I moved in with my maternal aunt, my mother's older sister. It felt humiliating to ask her for money, knowing she wasn't as wealthy as my dad, but she enveloped me in love and reassurance. She rallied her friends, scraped together every penny, and sent me to the culinary school of my dreams. I will forever be grateful to her. In France, I worked part-time, pouring every ounce of effort into my studies, determined to make her sacrifice worthwhile. I rose through the ranks, graduating as one of the most skilled chefs in my class. Within months, I landed a job at a prestigious French restaurant, sending half my salary back to my aunt, slowly repaying every debt. I was incredibly lucky, no crushing student loans for me. Years later, I moved back home, my savings finally enough to open my own restaurant. I worked as a head chef for a while, refining my vision. A few weeks ago it all came together. My restaurant, a lifelong dream, finally opened its doors. 2 of my friends from France joined as co-owners, and I was deeply touched when they let me name it. I chose my mother's name, a beautiful, uncommon name in our city, a lucky coincidence that felt like destiny. Everything was falling into place. A few days before our official opening, we held a small, private party for select guests. My aunt and her generous friends were there, along with my old school friends. Noticeably absent were my father and brother. We hadn't spoken since the day I walked out. I assumed we were all better off that way. But deep down I knew. I knew they'd eventually crawl out of the woodwork, drawn by the scent of my success like vultures to fresh meat. And sure enough they did. They arrived an hour before the party was due to begin. Our shared last name and their claim of wanting to surprise me got them past security. And surprised I was. Frozen actually as my dad and brother approached, greeting me with a sickening warmth I'd never once experienced in my entire life. My friends, picking up on my discomfort, politely greeted them and then wisely vanished, leaving me to face them alone. I hadn't even fully processed their presence when they pulled out their gift, a portrait of my mother. My dad, with feigned sincerity, claimed he commissioned it as soon as he heard a fancy new restaurant with that name was opening, knowing it had to be me. He'd always known I had it in me. My brother the same. Proud, he said. Immensely proud. My stomach churned. This was too much, too fake. I knew there was a catch, a reason for this unprecedented display of affection. I let them speak, waiting. Finally they got to the point. My brother, it turned out, was now a bartender, a job Dad had to pull strings for with a friend. His grades had tanked, no sports scholarship, and ironically he'd ended up in community college because he'd been rejected everywhere else. Their proposal? They wanted me to make my brother a partner in my restaurant, to give him a respectable position. He'd done absolutely nothing to deserve it. I wanted to laugh, a bitter, hysterical laugh right in their faces. But I held it back. Instead, I calmly said I'd think about it. I wasn't going to think about anything. I wanted them to stay to witness what was coming. They looked pleased, clueless about the storm brewing. As guests began to arrive, I socialized, watching Dad and brother puff out their chests, boasting about my success to anyone who'd listen. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. Towards the end of the evening, it was time for the hosts, my partners and me, to give a toast. My friends went first and then, finally, it was my turn. This was it. My chance to speak my truth, to lay bare all the pain and betrayal. I started by thanking everyone, raising my glass first to my mother. It was her unwavering faith, her spirit, that had kept me going even after she was gone. I truly believed that. Then I shifted gears. I thanked my incredible aunt and her friends, recounting how they'd selflessly loaned me the money for culinary school. And then I got to the heart of it. I told them why I needed that loan in the first place. I spoke of growing up with a father who never loved me, who belittled my passions, who saw my brother as his perfect, precious golden child. I revealed how he'd refused to pay for my education, out of fear that I would become more successful than his favored son. I spoke of leaving home, of the hardships, but also of how those very challenges had forged me into the resilient person I was today. In a way, I said, my voice steady, they deserve some credit for creating the crucible that made me. The room was silent, save for the murmurs of shock. Eyes, full of disgust and pity, fixed on my father and brother. They looked ashamed, faces burning, though I knew deep down they felt nothing but indignance. Then I walked over to them and in a performance worthy of an Oscar, I hugged them both. Putting on the same fake smile they'd worn when they first arrived, I announced to the room that because they had shown up to celebrate my success, I was ready to forgive them for the past. And, as a gesture of reconciliation, I would even offer my brother a job, as a bartender at my new restaurant. The crowd erupted in applause, wolf whistles echoing through the room. They saw a beautiful, emotional reconciliation. Only my father, my brother, and I knew the truth. This wasn't forgiveness. It was public, soul-crushing humiliation. They were trapped, forced to smile, to nod, to act grateful, unable to storm out as they so clearly wanted to. Later, as the last guest departed, my father and brother cornered me outside the restaurant. They were absolutely livid, my brother's eyes brimming with furious tears. They demanded to know what I'd done, why I hadn't simply turned them away. I just laughed, a deep, satisfying laugh. This, I told them, is my way of paying you back for everything you've done over the years. This is exactly what you deserve. Then I got in my car. I didn't look back, even as I heard my brother crying about my cruelty, my father yelling that I'd regret this. I just drove away. That was a couple of days ago. I haven't heard from them since. My aunt thinks I might have gone a little too far, that I should have just kicked them out. But I don't agree. Not one bit. This was well deserved. After that night, my aunt and I had a long talk. She still believes I was too harsh, but I explained that they had every chance to apologize when they came to me and they didn't. They came for a handout. We agreed to disagree. Meanwhile, my brother hasn't wasted time. He's been bad-mouthing me to every friend we had in high school, exaggerating the story to make himself the victim, claiming I humiliated and then kicked them out after feeding them 3-day-old food. Petty rumors usually don't bother me, but I can't have potential customers taking this nonsense seriously. So, I texted my brother, "Stop spreading lies about me and my restaurant, or he'll lose his bartending job." I really hoped that would be enough. It wasn't. My brother texted back, absolutely delusional, saying he'd only stop if I made him a partner. The sheer idiocy of slandering the very restaurant he supposedly wanted a stake in was baffling. This was clearly my dad's tactic, trying to strong-arm me into giving his darling son a high-profile job he hadn't earned. I told him he had no leverage, that if he didn't stop, he'd be hearing from my lawyers. I really hoped he'd take it as a final warning. It's been about a month since then. My brother did stop talking crap, but their desperation for my success remained. My dad, with my brother in tow, showed up at my house trying a new intimidation tactic. They threatened to sue me for using my mother's name for the restaurant, claiming they'd already spoken to a lawyer. They told me if I didn't want trouble, I needed to make my brother a partner. I immediately called their bluff. What lawyer would take such a ridiculous case? She was my mother too. By then I'd reached my limit. I told them if they didn't leave me alone, I'd call the cops. My brother, finally snapping from constant humiliation, lunged at me trying to grab my collar. Thankfully, Dad held him back. I warned my father to get out, but he sent my brother to the car and tried to manipulate me, saying Mom would be really upset if she saw what I was doing. That was the last straw. I told him to leave me the hell alone. He couldn't use my mother to get his way. We were so far past reconciliation, neither of them had ever apologized. As for what Mom would feel, I know she would have been equally let down by him when he crushed my dreams all those years ago. He was the last person who could lecture me about her feelings. I know she's proud of me wherever she is. And nothing my dad says will ever change that. My restaurant is thriving and we're already looking to expand. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to cut ties with family who only showed up when you succeeded? Tell me what you think, I really want to know.